Here are 3 things that people don't tell you about climbing.
I used to be super obsessed about climbing, and I've watched tons and tons of videos. After being in the climbing community for more than 3 years, I've realized that there are some things people don't really talk about too much, especially in beginner climbing videos. So I'm starting a multi-part series on things they don't tell you, starting with this video. I'm going to share 3 tips and healthy habits that you can start building today to become a better climber in the long run and reduce your chances of getting injured. I'll explain why it can be so good for your climbing and give you some ideas of how you can implement these tips.
I know a lot of times, especially when you're just starting out, there can be this tendency to want to chase grades and see how quickly you can become a V4, V5, V6 climber, which is all great and it's such great motivation. But climbing is a dangerous sport. Right at that point where you're super excited about climbing, you've got all of these skills and techniques that you want to apply, but then you injure yourself and you're out for another 6 months to a year. I know a lot of people personally who injured themselves at the very beginning of their climbing journey, and my does that put a pin on things. So in this video today, I'm going to talk to you about 3 things that I've found to be very helpful and are honestly habits I think any beginner should start building. So before I get into the tips, I have to put a disclaimer that I'm not a physiotherapist, but let's get into it. Tip number 1 is down climb. Now I know that sounds a little bit boring, and the last thing that you want to do when you're at the very top of the hold, you've just spent all of your physical energy, is to figure out how to get back down. But everyone always says down climbing is the safest way down. And I know a lot of people skip this, a lot of people just jump down, they've mastered the art of falling, which by the way is very important, because if you're ever at a point where you can't down climb for any reason or you are super tired, you do need to learn how to fall safely. But if you can help it, down climbing can be such a great thing to do. And here's why. You're actually building muscle as you down climb. You are working out your back, your abs, and so it's a really good way, especially if you're like me at the beginning and you don't really like going to the gym, you don't really want to intentionally work out your back muscles on top of climbing. It's a really great way to start to build that muscle. Another reason is down climbing gives you a way to practice. You can think of down climbing kind of like a drill. It's another chance for you to practice your technique, your foot placement, being intentional about where your body is and what your body's doing. But honestly, if you can reduce your chances of an injury, why not? I know so many people who twisted their ankle, injured a wrist because of falling. And if you can reduce the chance of that by simply down climbing, I think that's a worth it tip. Tip number 2, start cross training. I know when I first started as a climber, all I wanted to do was climb. And if someone came up to me and said, you should work on your legs or you should work on your shoulders, I would be like, no thanks, I just want to climb. So I get it. And it might not be something that you need to do from day 1. But in the long run, especially when you're looking to climb a lot more often or a lot more frequently, cross-training can be really important to make sure that your body isn't lopsided. There's this thing called the climber's hunch, which basically describes how climbers use so much of their back muscles, and if they don't work on their chest and their shoulders, there can be this tendency to kind of like hunch over like that. So I would advise to at least do some simple shoulder presses. If you want to bench press, you can do that.
You can also do tricep dips or skull crushers. Essentially, you want to work out your antagonist muscles, which are the opposite muscles to the ones that you use for climbing. These are important for climbing performance and injury prevention because, like the climbing doctor says, the body needs to have a balance. If you continually use the same muscles for climbing and you ignore your opposing muscles, over time, the muscles you use will become much stronger, and the ones you don't will start to become underdeveloped. Now that tight or underdeveloped muscle might start to interfere with your body's movement and strength, or it might lead to strain in other areas as those areas try to compensate for the weakness. Training antagonist muscles can help with better stability, strength, smoothness, prevent injury, and might even unlock new moves or new ways to do a problem.
Honestly, in climbing, there's quite a lot of leg work as well, so working out your lower body could also be a good idea.
You can do squats and deadlifts. You might also want to throw in some ab strengthening movements. Your core is going to be really important, especially if you do a lot of overhangs, but just in general, it helps with stability and it helps you to stiffen up for certain movements or dead points. Now, some people like to do their strength exercises as a warm-up before climbing with lighter weights. Some do it with heavier weights at the end of the session, and this is really just so you don't need to have a separate gym day if you're intent on climbing as often as possible, like I was when I first started.
Tip number 3 is honestly implement a good warm-up and cool-down routine. Now this, I can't emphasize enough how game-changing this was for me. Now you know that excruciatingly painful feeling that you get after you climb, where your hands are sore and you can't even open a door? That's called the pump. When I first started climbing, I would climb 2 to 3 times a week. And then I'm an office worker, so I would come back and just sit all day in front of my laptop and work. This was also during the time of COVID, so I was at home all the time and I didn't really get the reps in walking to the coffee maker, making coffee, and talking to coworkers. So anyways, had a little bit more of a sedentary lifestyle plus climbing. I started to get really bad back pain and leg pain as well after climbing. And it was very confusing because this was the most active that I'd been in ages. So why was I getting all of this pain all of a sudden? I thought with more movement, you should be more mobile. But training and climbing is very different from recovery movements, from working on mobility, flexibility. And one really easy way to combat that soreness that really worked for me was implementing a cool down routine. I actually didn't implement a cool down routine until I took an intermediate climbing course. I remember during that course, the instructor was saying, so what do you guys do to warm up? What do you guys do to cool down? And at that point, I was really trying to do warm-ups because I did see a huge impact on my ability to climb after implementing warm-ups. But I hadn't really done any cool downs. And he was like, did you know cooling down is actually really important? You should not skip that. And I was like, I'll try it. I've been having back pain, so why not? And really, my pain disappeared. Not overnight, obviously, but it really made a huge difference. So if there's one takeaway that you have from this video, I would say warm up. You can do simple shoulder rolls, warm up this upper part of your body. You can take a band, stretch it out this way, and also stretch it out in the back. And then you can do hip rolls, you can do knee and ankle rolls, and then you can do some warm-ups just for your wrists and your fingers. So one that I learned was to go like this, so fold your fingers, and then up again, then like that, up, and clench your hands into a fist really tightly. And you just repeat that a couple times. There's no real formula, but as long as you're warming up your joints before you climb, and then after you climb, make sure you're cooling down to prepare your body for rest and recovery. So there you have it. Those are my 3 tips / healthy habits that I would build if I were starting out as a new climber again. And not really things that people talk about, especially in these beginner videos. Let me know down in the comments below if there's anything that you're interested in. And I really hope you enjoyed that. Please hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you. Please thumbs up if you liked the video, hit the subscribe button to help me out, and let me know down in the comments below if there's anything that you're interested in.